Not long ago, there was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and he and his wife were out for a drive, and they needed gas, and so they pulled into the gas station, and this guy needed to go inside to do something, and so he walked inside, and as he came out again, he saw his wife chatting with one of the service station attendants, and he thought, oh, that's interesting, and he went and finished what he was doing, and they got back in the car, and they started driving, and he said, what was with that? What were you talking to that guy about? And she said, oh, that was a guy I went to high school with. Actually, we dated seriously before I met you. And then it was quiet for a little while longer. And then this CEO says to his wife, I bet I know what you're thinking right now. And she said, really? I'd like to see that. What do you think I'm thinking? And he said, I think that you're glad that you married me, so that you're married to a CEO and not a service station attendant. And then she said, that's not what I was thinking. He said, what were you thinking? And she said, I was thinking that I would be married to a CEO and you would be the service station attendant if I'd married him. We're a lot like the guy. Well, that's why it's funny to us, maybe. We're living our lives as if we're the center of everything and we make everything happen. We're the ones doing it. We're convinced it's about us. Make it or break it. We're the center of our story. And this is a lot like Jacob's story today. And it's about what's really happening. What's really happening, if only we knew. We're in this series called The Wrestle to Trust. It's the life of Jacob, and it's been wild so far. If you've been here with us or you've caught up, you know it's wild. I mean, it is jam-packed with deception and swindles and murder threats and sibling rivalry and God visits and love stories and trickery and weddings and sex and more weddings and mandrakes and more sex and babies galore. I mean, it is jam-packed. And if you think the Bible's boring, you just haven't read enough of it. Really. I mean, it might be hard to understand, but it's not boring. It's certainly not boring. Jacob has been in the hard work of making a family. He's got 12 kids in 7 years. In the UK, if you have 3 kids under 5, you're considered a family in crisis. So Jacob, I don't know where 4 wives puts you in the grid, but I think he's definitely in crisis. And the promise is happening though, right? Like the small families become a big family, and now if only he could just get a job to provide for all these kids. That's our story today. It's going to be great. Genesis chapter 30, verses 25 to 43. You can follow along on the screen or in your Bible, or just listen. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord Yahweh has blessed me because of you. Name your wages and I will pay them. Jacob said to him, you know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and Yahweh has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? What shall I give to you? He asked. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied, but if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages. And my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on the wages you've paid me, any goat in my possession that's not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that's not dark-colored will be considered stolen. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. That same day, he, Laban, removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks. Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the inner wood of the branches, the white inner wood of the branches. And then he placed the peeled branches in all the watering troughs so they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they made it in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and female and male servants and camels and donkeys. This is God's word. And my big idea this morning is you thought it was you, but it was actually God. You thought it was you, but it was actually God. Jacob does something I call going low, is my expression. It reminded me of another story you will have read if you were in our reading plan with me. Genesis 13, which we'd already read, is a story about Abraham and Lot. So Abraham, if you know that story, he left the land he knew, Haran, the same land we're talking about, and he left following the voice of God, and along with him came his nephew Lot. And in my mind, always Lot was like this young, cool teenage nephew, and he was like, oh, Uncle Abraham, can I come too? And he just comes along. But that's not how it was. Lot actually had a lot of stuff and herds and a whole entourage himself and family. And so the two of them are trying to go together, and there's so much conflict that finally Abraham and Lot say to each other, it's better if we go our separate ways. Like, nothing bad. Let's just go our own ways. And so to do that, they go up on this hillside and they look out over the land that God is leading Abraham to. And Abraham says, you pick first, whichever way you want to go, and I'll go the other way. And there's one area that's like beautiful, lush, like the valley is beautiful. It's the Jordan Valley. And then over on the other, it's like not as good. And Lot picks the good spot. He's like, I'm going to go over there. And that's lots of space for my herds. And Abraham says, okay. And he goes the other way. I was like, that doesn't seem fair to me. It's Abraham's trip. This is Abraham's land. Like, Lot, why are you doing? It just doesn't seem right. And then we find out, of course, that the valley is next to the thriving metropolises of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you know those places, you'll know it's not a good valley. You don't want to be there. And so as a kid, I was filing things in my God seems to like files. And these are the three things I took from that story. Number one, let the other guy pick first. Number two, be okay with getting the lesser thing. And number three, God will take care of it. I don't know if Jacob sat on his grandpa's knee at some point. Abraham and Jacob were around at the same time until he was about 13. So I don't know if he heard this story and he filed some things in his filing cabinet about this. But this is the way Jacob acts in our story. So Jacob wants to go back home, and it would be natural that he would expect Laban, his father-in-law, to send some parting gifts with them. He's worked all this time. He doesn't have anything of his own. He's done it all for Laban. It would make sense that he's family, that he would send him with some gifts. But he knows Laban. He knows that's not going to happen, and he has other ideas about this. He knows the blessing of God is here because of Jacob, and he doesn't want to lose the golden goose. He wants to keep him. And so he makes this statement, name your price. Now he says that he knows this because of divination. And it's interesting, divination is the practice of seeking to know the future or the unknown through supernatural means or through magical practices or kind of things you could do and get the answer. We run into this through astrology or mediums or fortune tellers or tarot cards. These are all ways you could practice divination today, I think. And it's interesting that Laban doesn't say to Jacob, the Lord has blessed me because of you. He says, I went and I had to find out through divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. It's like he doesn't know Yahweh. Yahweh is not his God. And this is how he goes to do this. And the truth is, the answer he got through divination isn't wrong. It's true. The Lord has blessed him because of Jacob. The problem with divination is, who are you going to get the answer? And what are you doing to get that answer? That's the problem with divination, why later it's banned in the law. Jacob names his price when Laban asks him, what do you want? He says, speckled and spotted sheep and goats and the black lambs. And I kind of think it's fitting, like Jacob's a bit of a black sheep himself, so it's kind of interesting. He says, I'll take all the black sheep, like as his thing. And the thing he's doing is, it means there'll be accountability for him. He can't cheat the system here. Like it's you can see it visually. And the second thing we see is that he can't control it. You can't make sheep have certain colored sheep. You can't do that. So he's putting his trust in the hands of God, even if maybe he thinks he can influence the outcome somehow. And then the third thing we see is that this is a good deal for Laban. That's why he jumps at it so quickly. So normally they say, I don't know, this is what commentators say, so I don't know how they know this, but 20% would be a good price to pay a shepherd in those days, that you would pay, that would be a good, reasonable fee for what the shepherd is doing for you. And also there would be stock options for wool, or maybe milk products that you could get out of that. But the truth is, most sheep are white, and most goats are brown or black. And so the mottled and striped sheep, those speckled ones, that's going to be a smaller group. They're rarer than the majority. And so he's taking this smaller thing. And so he's either genius or he's stupid in some ways, right? He could take a better price. And it would be as dumb as Abraham saying to Lot, you pick first. You take the best land. It's the opposite of a ripoff birthright or a stolen blessing. And we see Jacob turning over a new leaf in a way. He's trying something different. He's taking steps to trust God, this God who has made this promise to him. My question for you is, what would change for you if you knew deep down you couldn't be swindled? What if you knew deep down you couldn't be ripped off? That no one could thwart your success or curse you or ruin your life in such a way that would be catastrophic? What would change if you believed that as a follower of God? And I like to work my magic. That's my expression. Let's work our magic, right? When I was a young adult, I came upon an advertisement for a surefire wealth generating system. And it was about commodity trading. This guy was he made all this money, and he was willing to share with me his secrets. And he'd put it in this ad, share with everybody. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Wow. And I showed it to my friend, and he was like, we should do this. And we were like, yeah, well, we don't have the money to buy his videos, that he could send to us. So we would learn this secret system. And so we went to his dad, and we offered his dad to get in on the ground floor of making millions, he could invest and buy these videos and we'd pay him back. And so he did, probably shaking his head. And so I was super pumped. I watched these videos. I practiced the system, all the while counting the money I was going to make. This was how God was going to bless me so that I could be a blessing, of course. And I was thinking about that, and I worked really hard. And in the end, I ended up making minus $250, which is what the videos cost, because we never put any money into this crazy thing that didn't seem to work at all. It was not surefire. And a few of you are actually good at making money, and the rest of you could relate with me probably. That we're looking for a windfall or a scheme or some way to get the easy money. And usually when you walk that way, you find you just feel ripped off. You just do something and it just feels like a ripoff. And that's what happens to Jacob. He gets ripped off. The moment Laban and Jacob shake hands, Laban is already scheming. He's already scheming. The deal is all of his speckled and spotted sheep and goats and the black lambs. But before Jacob can get there, he sends this message. He gets them to remove all of those animals, and he gives them to his sons to hide. Like, oh, you're looking for the speckled goats? Oh, no, those belong to my sons. Those aren't mine. Oh, no, my sheep are here. It was like, Jacob, who's the shepherd? Would be like, there were all these black lambs yesterday. Where did those go? We don't know. Like, don't look over there at my son's sheep. But, they've all disappeared weirdly. Like, he's ripping him off completely. Laban had a good deal, but he wants a better one. He's on a mission to make Haran great again. And the way you do that is it's a cutthroat business trying to do that. Maybe some of you can relate to this feeling, or maybe all of Canada. This is unfair. This is unjust. Someone changing the terms of the agreement for their gain or their benefit at our expense, and it feels wrong. Maybe it makes you mad. I don't know. And the world will say to you, if you experience that, you are owed. You deserve this. You need to get what's yours. Jesus says in a particularly challenging sermon, "You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." That's a whole sermon of unpacking that. What does it mean? We have lots of ways we try to explain it, but it's a challenge, certainly. Of course, another response is to make the situation work for you. It says, Jacob, however, in verse 37, took fresh cut branches. He came up with a plan, a great thing he was going to do, to place the white stripes on them and peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood. And then he'd put the peeled branches by the watering troughs, and all the flocks are going to mate in front of the branches. And ta-da! They bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Like, amazing. Like, Jacob, this is pure genius. He's a man ahead of his time. If you talk to any biologist or farmer, they will say that this is common breeding practice. If you want white sheep, you just hold up a white flag and you get white sheep. And if you want black sheep, you just hold up a black flag and you get black sheep. And if you want polka dot sheep, you just hold up polka. No. That's not how it works. It's impossible to influence genetics through what a mother sees. Nor can you knock on wood and avert disaster. Nor do the hockey gods hate the Canucks, even though it feels that way so much of the time. Maybe it wasn't even superstition or folklore, as some suggest. That's what Jacob's doing. That's where he's getting this from. It could be, or it could just be that Jacob tried this and it worked. It seemed to work, and he felt like he was in control. If you peel the branches, look what's happening. It's working. And this is the same for us. We live in the same illusion because we're scientific, because we have Google and we have information, we have technology, and we're advanced. We live in this illusion. We're in control. Jacques Ellul wrote a book called The Technological Society, and he argues society's goal has always been to find more and more efficient ways of doing things. That's called technique. And then we made machines to make the most efficient way. That's called technology. And so he said, this has been the pursuit of society. And we did this with the plow. We developed a better and better way to plow things. And then we built factories, and we kept working on better and better ways to do the factory. And now we've got iPhones. We've got a better and better iPhone. And now today we've got AI. We need to make AI as most efficient as possible and get it working as well as it can. And his question was, when is enough enough? When will it be efficient enough for you to stop? He wrote that in 1964. Does it feel like we're more in control? When will we have arrived? Is this the goal of being a human, just to be more and more efficient? Or does it feel like endless striving? When will you be satisfied? When will you stop? But Jacob does know sheep. We should acknowledge that. He is doing something too called Mendelian genetics. He won't know that name, of course, but he's working with dominant and recessive traits, and he knows physical strength breeds physical strength. It doesn't matter the color of the sheep. A strong sheep will have a strong baby. It doesn't matter if they're black or white or polka dot, right? And he also knows that even solid colored animals will occasionally bear speckled sheep because of recessive genes. So he knows these things and he's working with it. But that doesn't explain his success. It doesn't explain it. Laban changes the agreement. We find out in the next chapter 10 times he changes the agreement. And still, it seems to work for Jacob. And at some point in the tricks and the wrestling for us, we need to stop and ask, am I aware of God? Have I sought him? And what is he up to in all of this? Because God is there all along. Another story I love is from Numbers 22, and it's the people of Israel are on their journey. They've come out of Egypt. They're not in the promised land. They're kind of wandering, and they have some victories, and they beat the Amorites. There's lots of different names. The Amorites, and they have this victory, and the other people watching them nearby are worried. And so the Moabites are nervous about the people of Israel, and so Balak the king decides he's going to hire someone to put a curse on them so they can beat them. And so he hires the local resident guru guy, the spiritual guy, the seer. His name's Balaam. And so he sends him a message, hey, can you come and curse these people for us? Balaam gets a word from God and says, I'm not allowed. And the king says, please, come. If you just come, you don't have to do it. You can just stand there and maybe a curse will come out. Please come. And finally Balaam's like, okay, I'll come. And so he starts to come. And if you know that story, there's like an angel almost kills him and there's a talking donkey. And that's a crazy story you should read. And Balaam finally arrives there and they stand up on the mountain. And Balaam says, I don't know if I can. And the king says, please, come on, just start saying something. Maybe you'll be a curse and you can curse these people. And Balaam says a blessing. And the king's like, no, don't. I didn't pay you to bless them. No, come stand over here. Like over here, you probably could get it. It's God's over there. You can do it from here. And then Balaam again blesses the people. And the king's like, no, I am not paying you to curse them. Like, come over here. Like, please, just try again. And this time start with some curse words. Really, let's get the curse going. Okay, buddy, come on. And again, Balaam blesses the people of God. And Balak is super mad. That's kind of how the story ends there. And it's so funny to me, that story. Like, they can't curse them, even though they're trying to. It just doesn't work. Like it says in Deuteronomy 23, God turned the curse into a blessing. That's what it seems like is happening in this story too. You've got a blessed sojourner in spite of all that Laban is doing. Right there in the east, far from the promised land and far from his family of origin and far from the familiar, Jacob prospers. He came there basically destitute. Like, did he have a backpack and he's like running away from home and he ends up there with nothing and now he's rich. It says he's rich. The wording is similar to Abraham's wealth in Genesis 12:16. It says in our passage, so the weak animals went to Laban, the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks and female and male servants and camels and donkeys. It's the same kind of language. And we see this happening over and over. The animals bore speckled and spotted sheep and goats, weirdly more than they should. That's what Jacob says in the next chapter. Genesis 31, he's explaining to Rachel, he says, God has not allowed him to harm me. Speaking of Laban. If Laban said, the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. Like no matter what he did, it worked out for Jacob. The word teemed is the word used. It's increased abundantly, it gets translated. It's used when God makes the promise at Bethel over Jacob, like abundant blessing. And then again over Laban when Jacob's with him, abundant blessing. And then again over Jacob now as he's stepping out on his own, abundant blessing. It's wild. And this is often the argument given for why we should be rich. Like Christians should be rich because Abraham was rich and Isaac was rich and Jacob was rich, so I should be rich, right? And I wish that were true, that we could do that. I wish if anyone. It would be nice if we could cherry pick one person's story and say, this is true for all of us. We all get that same blessing the same way and we apply it to us. But strangely, the New Testament talks about the blessing of God in a different way. Not land or riches or nation, but a holy people whose inheritance is God himself. Like, this isn't about money or recessive genes. This is about God himself. God. I was the kind of dad when my kids were little, so I have 5 kids. When they were little, like sometimes Lauren would go out for the day for something and I was like, okay guys, let's do something crazy. And when mom comes back, she'll see how crazy everything is. It's so awesome. Let's do something. What should we do? Like, let's clean up the rec room and mom will be so proud. Or what do you guys want to make something? And they'd be like, let's bake a cake. Okay, let's bake a cake. Like, I'm not a baker, but let's do it. And then mom would come home after whatever number of hours and the kids would run up and be like, Mom, look what we made. Look what we baked. Look how we cleaned this room. Look at the slam dunk. Look at my science project. And they'd like have these things, and meanwhile I was like behind. Look what they did, and like I was working madly to see it happen as a success, especially baking with kids. They're just like, put in the stuff, right? And you're like, no, that's not going to work. So I'm back in the behind the scenes making sure that they could say to her, look what I've done. And the truth is, maybe you've had that moment where your eyes were open and you realized the thing that you've been doing was actually God working, not you. You thought it was you. Genesis 31, Jacob shares this moment. He's talking to Rachel about all that's happened, and he says, in breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God came to me in the dream. Jacob, I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the Lord, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. And there comes a day where God pulls back the curtain and you realize that all your fresh cut branches and your peeled bark that you set up so diligently by the watering hole was just you. It was just you. Your science fair volcano, your 3-layer cake, your business venture, your natural remedy, your wealth, your accomplishments, your success. It was Abba. It was Abba. Isaiah 26 says, Lord, you establish peace for us, and all that we have accomplished, you have done for us. Paul warns the Galatians about doing this with their salvation, making this about you. He says in Galatians 3:2, I would like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard? Are you so foolish? After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh? Our lives were a mess. Like Jacob, we struggled to believe we were chosen and loved. We schemed and struggled and made decisions in fear, but He is faithful. He called us and He drew near and He made a way for us. And despite other people's agendas and mistakes and purposeful manipulations, God is faithful. Jesus died to set us free. And as we learn to trust Him, as we experience His faithfulness personally, we begin to surrender more and more and more is the journey of faith. And as we experience the wealth of His blessings offered to us by Jesus, We see its adoption and inheritance and his presence and provision and hope and a kingdom here and coming, and the list goes on. So much are we able to receive through Jesus. In conclusion, you thought it was you, but it was actually God. We see Jacob changing. We see him trying to make good choices, and he's doing well. Of course, there's always a moment where you could make the deal work for you. But Jacob chooses to go low, and it's a choice we face frequently, to give God room to move and to work. It involves trust. And Laban takes advantage of him. He steals and he changes the deal, and Jacob's working hard on his own ideas to make sure he comes out ahead. And I think we relate to this a lot. Our many efforts, our worried energies to ensure we don't lose out. The frantic pressure of our success. But God is there all along. He doesn't need striped branches to fulfill his promise. He blesses Jacob and ensures justice for his beloved chosen ones. And God blesses you through Jesus in the middle of the mess of your life. It's called grace. You are wealthy in the promise. Let's pray. Jesus, this morning, I pray that you would help us, every willing heart here. Would you help us to see you at work, to recognize your activity in our lives, to see that this is not about us and our mad scrambling, or the pressure we're under. Lord, this is about you and what you're doing, and we can trust you. Help us to see your faithfulness. Help us to let go of all that we're holding on to be able to embrace you, to walk beside you through all that you have for us. We love you. Amen.